This is CNN Breaking News.
And welcome to our viewers here in the U.S. and around the world. I'm Natalie Allen, and we're following breaking news out of Iran. A passenger plane carrying 66 people has reportedly crashed. It was flying from the capital, Tehran, to Yazouj, an area to the south. Let's check in with our senior international correspondent, Sam Kiley, in Abu Dhabi. He's following developments. Sam, what more do we know about the area where this plane went down?
It's extremely mountainous. Local authorities say that the aircraft went down in an area known as the Dina Mountain. Now, this one mountain alone has 40 peaks, over 4,000 meters. That is over 12,000 feet. An aircraft, a helicopter sent as part of a rescue attempt or an attempt to find the wreckage and look for any survivors, was actually forced back by bad weather. This aircraft took off at 7:55 local time and disappeared from a radar, we understand, about 50 minutes later, which would dovetail with its disappearance near Semiron. Now, authorities are saying a little bit more detail. They're saying that they think it went down 120 kilometers from Semiron in a small village in the mountains, but they haven't been able to get to it, and the assumption is that all of those on board are most likely have perished in this aircraft crash, which comes amid the continuing concern in aviation circles in Iran that the lifting or easing of sanctions against that country in return for it suspending its nuclear weapons program is not filtering through in terms of spare parts and improved maintenance. That is not to say, however, that there is any link established at all yet between the disappearance of this aircraft and any mechanical failure.
Well, we have seen protests by Iranians saying that they want more resources to stay in their country and spend them domestically, but yet again, as you say, we don't know the cause of this crash. Was there any hint or anything, do we know, from the cockpit of trouble?
There hasn't been yet any indication that there was a mayday signal or a communication expressing concern on behalf of the captain. The aircraft company has released a photograph showing a man in late middle age, clearly a veteran captain. So there is so far, any indication of perhaps mechanical failure or even bad weather. This aircraft simply, at the moment, vanished from radar and is believed to have gone down in this highly mountainous area, in an area that is at the moment blighted by bad weather, and that is hampering retrieval of things such as the black box, which will be fitted to this French-made twin turboprop aircraft.
So you say it went down 50 minutes after takeoff. Is this a routine flight? And how far into the flight would that mean it crashed? How long was it supposed to take it to fly to Yazouj? Do we know?
Well, it's a little over an hour's flight, or a little bit more than that, to Yazouj. We can see from the direction of travel between the capital, Tehran, and Yazouj, where it went down, or rather disappeared from radar, is on the normal flight path, that albeit perhaps a little close. Nobody's quite sure, at least I'm not quite sure, about whether or not the aircraft would have gone over that mountain range or around it. It's a pretty complex flying environment, but nonetheless, there's nothing to indicate that it was very far off track, and it was pretty much on time. It disappeared from radar. We don't know whether that was the moment at which it crashed or whether that was some other kind of possible failure. Of course, all of these sorts of details, if they find the black box, the flight recording apparatus that's on board these commercial airliners, particularly those fitted and manufactured in Europe, as this one was, that kind of information will emerge, no doubt. But for now, it appears that it was on a pretty routine flight from Tehran to Yazouj and has crashed en route in these very difficult mountainous area blighted by bad weather.
We hope the weather clears so they can reach the wreckage. Thank you so much. We'll stay in touch with you, Sam Kiley, covering the story for us. Thank you, Sam. Well, Iran right now is dealing with a domestic tragedy. A plane carrying 66 people has reportedly crashed in central Iran in an area known for its difficult terrain and weather. And that's why we brought in our meteorologist, Ivan Cabrera, to talk about what they're dealing with, because they haven't even been able to find this airplane.
No, and I think once they do, they're going to have a very hard time getting first responders there because of the terrain and also because of the weather. It's not cooperating. In fact, we're snowing there, and we're talking about some gusty winds as well. As we check in, this flight was supposed to get to Yasush, about 550-kilometer flight, right? This is not the actual flight path. I've just drawn this line so you can get perspective. There's Tehran, but this is the area now. We're thinking north of Semarang. That's the latest reporting anyway, about 100 kilometers or so to the north of that area. Very mountainous terrain, and that's why we're thinking it's going to be very difficult. In fact, I want to show you the satellite perspective here. There's Iraq, and there's an area of low pressure, and what that's been doing is pumping in a lot of moisture across the region here. We always look at weather when we have events like this, and we certainly always say that it's going to take a while before we determine whether weather was a cause. Certainly was not helping if the aircraft had gotten into trouble. We had very low visibility, and we had snowfall in the mountainous terrain as well. As the system continues pushing to the east, this is going to take about another 12 to 24 hours to really clear out of here. And so we've already gotten word that helicopters are being grounded and not being allowed to get into the region because of the visibility. So this is going to be quite precarious here, I think, in the next 12 to 24 hours before we get a break in the weather. By the way, this is for Yasush, Iran. That's the destination area. You go up higher and you're going to have much colder temperatures, which is exactly, by the way, I want to...
Well, let's bring you more now on what is and remains a developing story. A passenger aircraft with more than 60 people on board has crashed in central Iran. It went down during a flight from the capital Tehran to the southwestern city of Yasuv. Now, the emergency services say the plane crashed in the Zagros Mountains. That's what we know. Let's try and find out a bit more now from Youssef Taha. Youssef has been monitoring the story for the BBC World Service. We have initially been reporting what Iran have been saying, and that is that everyone on board was killed, but I understand that might not be the case now.
Well, in the last few minutes, the company, the Asaman Airlines spokesman, Mohammed Tabtabai, retracted that statement that there were no survivors, because he said the terrain is mountainous and is very inaccessible, and they had no access to the site, and therefore they can't locate the exact wreckage, and they had no access to the plane itself, so they can't tell whether there are survivors or not. And therefore he retracted that statement that there were no survivors. So the search continues. There are 20 search and rescue teams that have been dispatched to the area trying to locate the wreckage and see if they can rescue anybody.
Does this highlight yet again the need for Iran and its airlines to replace its plane fleets, which are ageing? Hopes that they could do have probably been dashed now, haven't they? Because President Trump no longer wants those sanctions lifted.
Well, they absolutely need to update their fleet, because Asaman Airlines is Iran's third largest airline. Its average age of an aircraft is 25.8 years. The airplane that crashed was 25 years old. While compare this with British Airways, which is 13.5 years, or Lufthansa German carrier, which is 11 years old. So therefore, Iran's planes are very old, and Iran, because of the sanctions that were imposed on it, was manufacturing locally some spare parts.
Youssef, many thanks for talking us through that. Much more details on that story on the BBC News website. Thanks for watching.